When we think of democracy, we think of the right to vote. A new Canadian legal decision now strips expats living abroad of that privilege. That's today's conversation taking place in Asia now. Hey everyone, great to have you with me here today. My name, of course, is Steve Miller, and if you're not aware of it, I'm an American. While I have been living here in Asia since 2009, I still participate in the electoral process in the United States. You see, while I may not be physically living in the United States, what happens there directly affects me, and I want to have the opportunity to let my voice be heard, to be part of the decision-making process. Unfortunately, that is not a privilege extended to my Canadian neighbors to the north. In 1997, Canadian courts ruled that expats away for more than 5 years didn't have the right to vote in domestic elections. Expats returning to Canada could have their 5-year clock restarted, even if they were only home for a short period of time, but that practice ended in 2007. In May of 2014, a court ruled in favor of expats and thus restored their right to vote. That decision was short-lived, however, as this week, Ontario's Court of Appeal overturned that ruling. Writing for the majority, Justice George Strathy wrote, "Permitting all non-resident citizens to vote would allow them to participate in making laws that affect Canadian residents on a daily basis, but have little to no practical consequences for their own daily lives." But is this truly a big deal? What are Canadians abroad saying?
My name is Jon Dunbar, and I'm from Edmonton, Canada, originally, in the province of Alberta. That's the place with all the tar sands. I moved to Korea in late 2003, and I've been here as a permanent resident for 11 years. I certainly did not feel very happy having my vote taken away. Are you familiar with the serial killer Paul Bernardo? He can vote, and I cannot. So how do you think I feel about that?
My name's Kevin O'Shea. I am from Louisbourg, Nova Scotia, Canada. And I live in Kobe, Japan, and I've been living here for 7 years. It's disappointing, I have to admit. I was pretty excited when I found out last year that Canadian expats did get the right to vote again. You know, I'm someone who is a political junkie. I am a very loyal Canadian. I love Canada. I'm always keeping my finger on the pulse of the political scene in Canada, what's going on, and I'm very... I guess I try to stay in touch as much as I can with Canada. So I was very excited to find out that I could vote, and to hear that I can't, and is disappointing, especially since there's a very big election coming up this fall.
According to Elections Canada, there was a 61.4% turnout in the 2011 election. However, in that very same election, only 6,000 of the more than 1 million eligible expats voted. That's an amount equal to 6,000ths of 1%. While local issues may not affect Canadians abroad, they still have ties to their home nation. They still are concerned about the direction of Canada. They simply want to engage in the electoral process and let their voices be heard.
What my country is doing still affects me in Korea, all the way overseas here. I even feel like maybe I kind of feel that a lot of what's going on a little bit more. Canada has really flipped around in recent years on policies. It's really not the country that I left anymore. It's just strange how far it could have fallen. It's become an anti-environmentalist country. It's anti-science. It's backtracking heavily on native rights and violating treaties with native people. It's suddenly falling really far behind in freedom through the recent Bill C-51, which basically radicalizes protesters, including environmentalists and native tribes. They're tough on crime despite lowering crime rates, and the prisons are being filled up, even though that's totally not necessary. They even ended the Canadian census for supposedly privacy concerns or to cut costs. And now the country just doesn't have the data to make informed policy decisions. All of this is mismanagement that just is ridiculous. And yet still Canada enjoys this reputation as a tolerant, environmentalist, safe, peace-loving, progressive country. I just don't buy that anymore.
Canadians living abroad are required to pay global income tax on their earnings. However, there are some ways to get around that, whether through severing financial ties with Canada or through reciprocal tax agreements. But that brings up a very interesting question. If you're not living in Canada and you're not paying taxes to fund the government, should you even be eligible to vote?
You know, I to be honest, you know, if you're someone who works for maybe like a Canadian company who has been transferred to a place like Japan for years, and I'm assuming, you know, if you're being paid by a Canadian company, even though you're living abroad, you're probably going to be paying taxes to Canada. If you're in a situation where you're paying taxes, or you know, each month or each year a chunk of your money is going back to Canada, I think absolutely you should have a right to vote. You know, it's interesting. I was just a little while ago looking at the Toronto Star's website, and they had a poll. And I think it had the categories like, of course, expats should vote. They're Canadians too. No, they shouldn't vote. I don't care, and I don't understand this. I think those are like the different things. And, you know, I clicked on it. I voted, of course, that all expats should be allowed to vote because they're Canadians too. And that was in the majority, actually. I think it was something like 55% of the votes to this point had, you know, were agreeing with that people should vote just because of the fact that they're Canadian. But on the same note, I see both sides of the argument. You know, I myself, you know, I'm disappointed that I can't vote, but at the same time, for example, I think the the appeals court judge said that why should people who are not residents of Canada be able to shape the laws that govern the people who do live in Canada, but those laws don't affect them in any way?
But not everyone is up in arms.
So my name is Marie, and I'm originally from Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I've been here in Korea for the last 9 years. I think that, you know, the right to vote is something that is, of course, very important. But for me personally, I've been in Korea so long that I don't really pay attention. In my personal case, I don't really pay attention to what's going on in Canada that much, because for the most part, every time I hear something, it's about, you know, Harper doing something ridiculous. And so I basically started distancing myself, I guess, from Canada slowly. And so, you know, if someone tells me I can't vote, I'm like, okay, whatever. But in fact, you know, for someone who is paying attention to politics and who plans to live in Canada again, this could be a really devastating ruling, I think.
The voting rights of expats have been the subject of legal challenges for years. I'm sure that will continue.
I believe that this will probably be overturned in another court in the near future, but it will probably be after the next election, and that's exactly what Prime Minister Harper wants in order to stay in power.
And now the floor is yours. Please, let me know, do you think that expats living abroad should be able to vote in their home country elections? If so, should there be any limitations placed on them? I hope you'll take the time to share your thoughts in the comments on Facebook or Twitter. Asia Now is a special feature of the Asian News Weekly podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends, and if you haven't, subscribe. Subscribing is absolutely free, and when you do, the next episode is delivered automatically to you. You can subscribe on our website, asiannewsweekly.net, or in your favorite podcast application. You can also keep up with more news from the region by following Asian News Weekly on Facebook or Twitter. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please drop us a line. The email address is podcast@asiannewsweekly.net. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, remember to be true to yourself and to always be awesome.